Bienvenue dans Décryptage. Le Centre africain pour le règlement constructif des différents accords, fondé en 1992, se décrit comme la plus importante organisation de gestion des conflits en Afrique. La célébration de l'anniversaire de ses 30 ans d'existence s'est tenue en marge de la deuxième retraite conjointe du Conseil de paix et de sécurité de l'Union africaine et du Mécanisme africain d'évaluation par les paix MAEP, organisée du 14 au 15 novembre 2022 à Durban en Afrique du Sud. Dans cette édition, Vasu Gounden, directeur exécutif d'Accord, nous parle des réalisations de cette organisation non gouvernementale au cours des 3 dernières décennies. Monsieur Vasu Gounden, merci d'être présent sur Africa 24. Vous êtes le directeur exécutif du Centre africain pour le règlement constructif des différents accords, organisation que vous avez fondée en 1992. Parlez-nous de cette institution.
So it was founded in 1992 by myself, basically to work with conflicts in South Africa. And then by 93 we were already meeting with the then Organization of African Unity, the Secretary General Salim Ahmed Salim, and we took the experiences we learned with resolving community conflict here in South Africa as well as high-level political conflict, and we started sharing that with the OAU, which was at that time also just starting its conflict management mechanism. So this is the genesis of Accord.
À travers la deuxième retraite conjointe du Conseil de paix et de sécurité de l'Union africaine et du MAEP, Accord a célébré 30 ans d'existence. Parlez-nous des réalisations de cette institution au cours de ces 30 dernières années et quel message pouvez-vous adresser au continent à cette occasion?
So I think the first message is that 30 years is a good milestone for an African institution because we are not good at building and sustaining institutions in Africa. And what we tried to do with the Accord was to show that in Africa we can build a center of excellence, not just in Africa, but a global center of excellence. So today Accord has a global reach. It's well recognized within the United Nations system, within the African Union, within the REX. And what has been its achievements? It's institutionalized in this field of conflict management. We've institutionalized skills. So we have trained upwards of 20,000 people on the continent, from presidents, military leaders, down to community activists. Secondly, we have institutionalized mechanisms or systems. We have assisted the African Union, the REX, to build their conflict management systems, their mediation units, their early warning units. So we've built skills, we've built structures, and now that has been systematized in the African peace and security architecture as well as the architectures in the regions. So if you look at the success of Accord over the last 30 years, it's contributed in Africa and globally to building skills, structures and systems in conflict management.
Quel peut être l'apport d'une telle retraite sur l'architecture africaine de paix et de sécurité?
Well, you know, Mildred, for a long time, we all knew that there was a nexus between peace, security, development and governance. But we still worked in silos. So this is why the importance today with the reconstitution of the commissions of the African Union, we now have political affairs, peace and security in one commission. Okay, so what that does is to ensure that we build the links between peace, security, governance and development, because you cannot do them in silos. You can't talk about resolving conflicts without meeting the challenges of governance and without meeting the challenges of development. They have to be done simultaneously. So this retreat is extremely important. It's the second one, which we are very pleased about, that we were also able to be co-hosts of this. So it's bridging the gap that existed between peace and development and governance.
Quelle est l'importance de cette retraite au vu de la réalité africaine caractérisée par de nombreuses menaces à la paix et à la sécurité?
Yeah, the threats towards peace and security today, unfortunately, there are a number of factors that are converging at the same time. So we are seeing exponential population growth. I just saw the statistics not so long ago. In 1985, there were 500 million people on the continent. Today, there are 1.4 billion people on the continent, so almost 3 times the number of people on the continent, and 60% of them are youth, which means 850 million people on the continent are young people. That's more than the entire number of people that were on the continent in 1985. And yet, We have not been able to transform our economies to create livelihoods for young people. So that's the major danger that we face on the continent. And these young people in the urban areas, they are going to rise. So we are going to see a rise in political and social conflict. In the rural areas where they are marginalized, there are going to be insurgencies that are going to recruit them. And this is going to be the huge challenge. How do we deal with social and political conflict? How do we deal with rising insurgencies? And the fact that youth are caught in the middle of all of this. This is going to be the major challenge for us on the continent.
Y a-t-il des projets en cours au sein d'accords visant à promouvoir la paix et la sécurité en Afrique?
No, absolutely. So right now, as I said when we were in the conference earlier, that one of the things you have to do when you are seeing rising political and social conflict, as well as young people being recruited by insurgencies, you need interlocutors on the ground, because inevitably when you have social and political conflict, governments will be on one side and citizens will be on the other side. And so when citizens rise, I was a student leader, during the state of emergency under the apartheid government here in this province, in this country. I mobilized thousands of young people. And we engaged the government, sometimes very violently. And the government at that time did not have interlocutors that it could talk to. So today we are saying, how do we empower young people with leadership skills, with conflict management skills, so that whilst they respond to their own grievances, they also have the skills that will allow them not just to resort to violence, but to also negotiate with their governments.
Dans le cadre des pourparlers de paix organisés par l'Union africaine en octobre 2022 en Afrique du Sud pour un cessez-le-feu entre le gouvernement éthiopien et les rebelles du Tigris, le Premier ministre Abiy Ahmed a souligné que l'ingérence étrangère entrave considérablement le dialogue entre les deux parties. Quelles stratégies peuvent être adoptées pour limiter l'ingérence étrangère dans les processus de paix en Afrique?
I think we are very concerned about it now, particularly because there's a rise in this geopolitical conflict between the United States and NATO on the one side, European countries, and then Russia, China, Iran, etc. on the other side. And what we will see is again a new Cold War in Africa, with Africa once again being sacrificed on the altar of a Cold War, even a hot war, because we might see now not just what we saw in the Cold War, kind of stalemate and proxy governments on either side, but we might now see active conflict on the continent. And this is our fear. And we are saying that, how do we resolve this? Firstly, we are saying to our partners from outside, we are not saying we don't want foreigners in Africa. Yes, we want you to support us, to assist us with our development. But we don't want to see private military companies all over the continent. We want to have our own destiny being shaped by ourselves as Africans. And the only way we can do that is if we strengthen our institutions on the continent, we strengthen our own security structures on the continent, we strengthen our own governments on the continent, and we ensure that our people don't go poor, don't go unemployed, and that we close the inequality gap. So these are the things that we as Africans got to respond very, very actively to. We can't be passive players in this game. We can't be reactive. We have to be proactive.
Monsieur Vasu Gounden, vous êtes le directeur exécutif du Centre africain pour le règlement constructif des différends. Merci d'avoir honoré notre invitation. Merci à vous de nous avoir suivis dans ce décryptage. Restez sur Africa 24 pour les prochaines éditions.